Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Anas and I am from LLB2A. Today we will be discussing Indo-Pak relationship since 1947 to till date. As long as any child born after independence of the subcontinent is well aware of the standard relationship between India and Pakistan. The ties between both the countries have been a roller coaster, but mostly they both are in clothing of mortal enemies and they have had three wars since 1947. There are numerous reasons for why both countries never went along well. Dispute after dispute constructed timeline of hatred. So there are one of the major happenings that took place between two states since 1947. First of all, the Kashmir issue. Second, the injustice and lack of expertise. At the time of independence and partition, the Canal water dispute, the Interwater Treaty, the wars of 1965, 1971, the Shimla Agreement, the Siachen Glacier happened, the Kargil War, the PULWAMA and Balakot attack, and abolishment of articles in disputed Jammu and Kashmir. At the time of partition of India, Lord Mountbatten gave liberty to the states to decide whether to join India or Pakistan. As we mentioned earlier, the Valley of Kashmir had majority Muslim with the tyrant rule of a Hindu Raja. During the partition of Gulab Singh's son Hari Singh, he desired to have independent dominion. However, it was made clear that Kashmir either have to side up with India or Pakistan. Hari Singh despised Muslims, let alone join a state of 1,000 Muslims. The Dogra ruler had standstill agreement with Pakistan and India, but secretly allied with India before sending an Indian army to Kashmir on 27 October 1947. The Maharaja already got army personnel in Jammu Kashmir. Once together, the army rushed into Srinagar airport and got Kabilis turned out and ruthlessly treated Kashmiris. The Hindu Maharaja claimed on being of a part of India, which eventually caused a rebellion in Kashmir. It resulted in mass rapes and mass killing of Muslims, and on an approximation, 20,000 to 100,000 Muslims were killed by Hindus and Sikhs. Talking about the genesis and development of Kashmir issue, when Indian forces failed to take back areas occupied Jammu and Kashmiri freedom fighters, India took this issue to the Security Council and adopted the stand that Kashmir had already been integrated with India. It further blamed that Pakistan had attacked on Kashmir. Pakistan challenged the accession of Kashmir to India and apprised the Security Council about the actual position. It stressed that Hindu Raja did not have right to decide the future of Kashmir, rather Kashmiris should have this right. The Security Council directed for a ceasefire in Kashmir through a resolution. The ceasefire came into effect on 1st of January 1949. It was decided that a free referendum will be carried out in Kashmir under the supervision of United Nations. The resolution of Security Council was accepted by both Pakistan and India. The United Nations made efforts for the settlement in India, but India was dishonest from the beginning. It created hurdles for a free referendum in Kashmir. India expected that Kashmiris would definitely vote in favor of Pakistan, so India delayed and later on deployed a large number of forces there. While declaring Kashmir as an integral part of India, it flatly refused to have a referendum. The Kashmir issue is still unresolved. At the time of independence, it was made clear that the old British India would be divided into two countries, that are India and Pakistan. Nonetheless, Pakistan had inherited a new set of problems. The biggest problem was dividing the assets between two countries. It was held that India and Pakistan would get assets in the ratio of 17 to 5, which reflected the size of the countries. 750 million rupees were to be paid to Pakistan in June 1947 of the 4 billion rupees in the Reserve Bank of India. After the first 2 billion were granted, a war broke out over Kashmir. India denied giving the rest of amounts, stating that Pakistan would use this money to buy ammunition to fight against India. They were only willing to give money if Pakistan agreed that Kashmir is part of India, to which Pakistan refused. The strategy was for Pakistan to face bankruptcy. However, Pakistan received the rest 500 million rupees after Gandhi protested. Another problem was Pakistan's army comprised of 15,000 men that needed 4,000 officers. There were only 2,500 trained Muslim officers because Britain favored Hindu officers. Moreover, entire 16 ordnance factories were situated in India and they refused to hand over any, and Pakistan had no factory to make arms and ammunition. 60 million rupees were paid to Pakistan by India in lieu of handling over the ordnance factories. An ordnance factory was built in Pakistani government. The military supplication given to Pakistan at the time of independence arrived late, was worn out and obsolete. Pakistan was under-resourced in terms of military forces at time it became independent. The division of subcontinent divided many rivers and canals. The main set that arose for Pakistan was that flow of water through the canals was monitored by a series of headworks, which were sited in India. Indian government pledged not to interfere with the supply of water to Pakistan. However, soon both the countries started having disputes, especially the Bari Doab Canal. Indian argued that since the headworks were in their country, they could do whatever they wanted with the water. On the other hand, Pakistan argued that their economy depends on the supply of water and had the right to interfere with the headworks. Pakistan urged India to settle the problem in the International Court of Justice, but India declined. A temporary agreement was reached in May 1948, and India agreed to permit water from East Punjab to flow in the west, but only if Pakistan agreed to find substitute water supplies. Similarly, there happened the Indus Water Treaty, in which, as we know, after independence, the headworks of canals remained in India and the drainage area of those rivers were in Pakistan. In 1948, India threatened to discontinue the water supply from these headworks. This would affect the richness of Indus Plain. World Bank interfered and eventually resolved the matter in 1960, and an agreement was signed which was termed as the Indus Water Treaty. According to this treaty, Pakistan received exclusive rights to the water of the western rivers, that are River Indus, River Jhelum, and River Chenab. Now we will discuss the major wars that happened between India and Pakistan. The Battle of 1965 was a peak of apparent multitude of wars that occurred between April 1965 and September 1965 among Pakistan and India. This war saw the biggest amassing of troops in Kashmir since the segment of India 1947, a number that was disguised uniquely during the 2001 and 2002 military deadlock among India and Pakistan. This war was battled on Western Front, Indo-Pak outskirt, that we say, and Zero Point. In Battle of 1965, Pakistan stood firm for themselves and for Kashmir too. They constrained the Indians to acknowledge their free panel to settle an endless fringe disagreement regarding the reign of Kutch on Sindh-Balochistan outskirt. After that, they likewise constrained Indians to consent to set up of a global body to choose a responsibility for. In 1965, as the war began, Pakistan invaded outfitted guerrillas into Indian-involved Kashmir and started neighborhood surprising. As neighborhood uphold was strict for an uprising, the entire adventure of finished in a disappointment. Pakistan's aspiration of constraining India to acknowledge their board was fizzled. The fundamental reason that could be absence of assurance and legitimate direction. As United States and England had both set a disalliance and offering equipped weapons to two nations, Pakistan was completely subject to West for military supplies, which made Pakistan depend on China's discretionary developments, which compromised Pakistan more to step on resistance of India, and that bombs the honesty of Pakistan. The War of 1971 resulted in separation of East and West Pakistan, while the wings already had enough tension between them and India fueled it. The war became irresistible. Indian attacked East Pakistan from air, ground and sea on 4 December, and 2 days later India officially recognized Bangladesh as an independent government. Indian forces had surrounded Dhaka within 2 weeks. Indian army also tried to divert West Pakistan's attention by attacking Kashmir and Punjab, but it wasn't very successful. United Nations passed a resolution and calling on Pakistan and India to immediately stop the war and withdraw their forces from East Pakistan as a solution is figured out. However, USSR was going to help India if they go to war, whereas US was not in favor of the war and they wouldn't support Pakistan. Yahya Khan accepted defeat and ordered the army in East Pakistan to surrender. Mukti Bahini carried out marches in EP of anyone who was suspected of allying with Pakistani army. Now let's talk about the Shimla agreement that happened between Pakistan and India, and it was of significant importance to restore diplomatic relations. This agreement was signed on 2nd July 1971 by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Prime Minister of India, the Indira Gandhi, in order to release the prisoners captured during the 1971 war. In exchange, that Kashmir problem will be discussed with India and not on international forums. As many conflicts were going on between Pakistan and India regarding Kashmir, one of the side but historical conflict was around the Siachen Glacier. The border of that place has never been properly pinched. In 1981, Pakistan was concerned that India might conspire and try to take hold of that border. So Pakistan decided to send their troops for protection of Kashmir. But as soon the troops arrived, they were shocked to see 300 Indian troops already present there camping on the mountains. So Pakistan's troops decided to troll in. The region there was barren type like infertile. That was actually its symbolic importance. That's why both the countries, Pakistan and India, sent their troops to region and estimated spend more than 500 million US dollars each year in prevention of possession of that place by enemy forces. This problem is still in time, and many wars were already had fought, but that was all in vain. Both the countries have lost 5,000 soldiers, essential life for that Siachen Glacier border possession. Now let's talk about the third war that happened between India and Pakistan, and that's the 1981's, the Kargil War. In April 1999, Kashmiri militants crossed the unidentified border between free and occupied Jammu Kashmir and seized the towns of Kargil and Dras. India attacked back in May and fired over 250,000 shell and rockets. India attacked Pakistan as two of its aircraft crossed Pakistan's airspace and Pakistan shot one down. The whole world was alarmed as two countries with nuclear power had gone to war. However, in June, Pakistani forces were withdrawn because US President at the time Nawaz Sharif, called Nawaz Sharif to extract the forces from the Indian held territory behind the line of control. This war once the relationship between India and Pakistan. The PULWAMA and Balakot attacks are the recent happenings that occurred between India and Pakistan in 2019. On February 14, 2019, a caravan of vehicles passing through Jammu and Kashmir highway that carried military personnel were attacked by a suicide bomber in Pulwama district. This resulted in death of 40 police officers. Pakistan denied any connection with the attack. However, a party claimed the responsibility of the attack. That we say Kaladam Tanzim in Urdu. This attack rapidly deteriorated relations between India and Pakistan. In the same year, on February 26, Pakistan announced that Indian warplane had entered the Pakistan territory and dropped their payload in hilltop area near Balakot. India later on issued a statement saying that the attack was authorized to kill terrorists residing in that area. Nonetheless, it was just alleged that no one was killed as there was no terrorist base there. On the very next day, India attacked Pakistan again and Pakistan retaliated and shot down the pilot and Pakistan military took him as a prisoner. He was returned on the 1st March. The pilot name was Abhinandan, by the way. This incident was first time since the 1971 war that countries crossed the line of control via airplanes, and also since both countries have become nuclear power. This also resulted in a lot of tension between two countries. Now we will talk about the abolishment of articles in Jammu and Kashmir disputed areas. In August 2019, Indian forces deployed thousands of Indian forces in Kashmir and completely shut down Kashmir from outer world. Colleges, schools, universities, work, everything was completely shut down. This is for in the result, tourists had to leave, phone call and internet service were suspended. A complete lockdown was faced by Kashmiris. This was not all. Indian government on its own decided to revoke Article 370, which gave Kashmiri people special privileges. These articles allowed the state to have distinct and autonomy, constitution and separate flag, and liberty to make laws. This outraged Pakistani government and people because they knew that the discussion was imposed on their fellow Kashmiri brothers. Moreover, this was highly unethical. There were many protests to, to reverse their decision. The decision is not reversed yet, but still rage fuel in Pakistanis. So, hence, to conclude, Pakistan and India don't see each other as a friendly neighbor country, and it may be possible because of the phase that they had bad blood before countries became independent. Because of the discrimination Hindu and Muslim faced on the hands of each other, occupying Kashmir forcefully became a cherry on top. Kashmir explicitly stated on 23rd March 1940 that it will become part of Pakistan, but Hindus deceived and forcefully occupied it. The main reason Pakistan can't stand India is the way that they captured Kashmir and the way they are treating them and their undue interference in Pakistani's matter. So here this is all by my side. Today we discussed the India-Pakistan relationship from 1947 to till date. Thank you and Allah Hafiz.